lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Jeremy Lee in the building and every guest that you ever needed. Sports cards after hours keep the hobby heated. Updates, hobby talk like you never seen it. Sports cards live and none could ever beat it. Sports cards is a lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Welcome to another episode of Sports Cards Live with your host, Jeremy Lee.
All right, guys, we are back at it. It has been a minute, as they say, but welcome everybody to episode number 202 of Sports Cards Live. It is Saturday night, October the 28th, 2022-23. My name is Jeremy Lee. I want to thank everybody who joined us last episode with Ray Schulte. Had a great episode with Ray. You can check that out on the channel. Want to let everybody know what's coming up on the channel in the coming days through next Saturday. Tomorrow, we have back-to-back episodes. We've got the LCG extended auction, extended bidding, their fall pop culture auction starting at 4 o'clock Eastern. And then at 9:30 Eastern is the PWCC Weekly Hockey. Monday night, 9:30 Eastern is MC Mondays. It'll be our 15th episode. And then next Saturday on Sports Cards Live, we actually have a two-segment, I'm calling it a two-segment episode. The early segment, we're going to have Jeff Wilson on from the Sports Card Investor to talk about his new store, his thoughts on the state of the hobby. He's opening up a major LCS out in Atlanta, so I want to hear his thoughts. And then we're going to have the pre-Expo episode. Looking forward to that. We're going to have Mikey Singer from the Expo, as well as Amit will be joining us again. I want to remind everybody to join close to 500,000 people who have downloaded the Center Stage app across both iOS and Android for quick comps and card management features. Their app is the fastest, most accurate at card shows or at home to help you price your cards. You can build, organize, and share your collection with your friends and find other collectors to follow using their social sharing features. They have grading partnerships and marketplace features are coming soon. Check out their Instagram account and join me in supporting the great team they have there. That is Center Stage app. And check out the innovation they are undertaking. Also, guys, use protection, practice safe swaps. VeriSwap is that middleman service. And I just saw today, their app is now available in Canada as well as the US. So be sure to check out VeriSwap. Also, shout out to Leighton, Sheldon, Just Collect. He'll be joining us shortly for the Vintage Spotlight segment. And also, if you hadn't heard yet, ComC is now supporting tag graded cards. Very excited about that. Big win for Tag, and just overwhelmed by the acceptance by ComC and the overall hobby to this point. I want to thank Mike and Jesse from Sports Cards Nonsense podcast for having me on just the other day. That was a lot of fun talking to them about the hockey market. And thanks to all Sports Cards Live sponsors and partners for the ongoing support. And of course, to all you loyal viewers and listeners. And if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, please take a moment and do so. And as always tonight, your comments, your questions are in play. Let's get to it. Tonight's guest started in the hobby in 1981 buying O-Pee-Chee hockey and baseball cards. He has since authored several books and price guides and was integral in rewriting the rookie card rules in 1999. His favorite teams are the Vancouver Canucks and the Montreal Expos. His favorite athletes of all time are Richard Brodeur and Gary Carter. He is originally from Vancouver, BC, currently hailing from Ottawa, Ontario. Let's bring him out. Richard Scott, welcome to Sports Cards Live. How are you tonight, bud?
I'm doing great. It's wonderful to be here. This is it's a wonderful job that you've been doing, putting together all these great interviews and just telling the stories of the hobby. So looking forward to the next few hours.
The next few, yeah, we're in for a show. We're gonna have a great show as always. I'm excited to have you on, Richard. You're somebody who I've been aware of. I've known about you. It feels like for 20 plus years, and we're gonna learn why, because you've been somebody who's been in the hobby like forever, since you were since you were in high school even. So let's just jump in and kind of get through a bit of your hobby or professional history. Set the stage. Let people, because like you're somebody who you've been there, you've done that. This guy's got like, I don't know how many books, but I actually want to do this too for you. I have I'm gonna right now put a link in the chat, so anybody who's watching will be able to click on this. I'm gonna put it in the chat right now, and this is a link to your Amazon store. So people, you guys can click on that now and you'll see all the various books that Richard has written that are for sale on Amazon. It's pretty awesome. And I'm just going to show one. Like here's one. The first, listen, I've had other of your publications, but I bought this probably in 2017, 2018, I believe, on Amazon. I knew your name. It says it says Richard Scott on here somewhere. I knew that it was you right there. Hockey Media by Richard Scott. Anyway, I bought the book back then, and I've used it as a reference guide many times since purchasing it. It's got tons of information, but you just put out the updated version, which is thicker and in color. Like it's awesome. You guys, anyone who collects hockey cards or even the history of the sport, history of sports cards, you got to go check out this book for sure. And then, as Jake Dahl says, I'm liking the Parky book. Richard, I don't have it. I haven't seen the Parky book, but it's on my shopping list. So anyway, listen, I've done enough talking. Why don't you let us know a bit about your history and take us through your journey so far?
Yeah, it's I guess there's some gray hairs that I've got here, which will tell you that, since high school, been writing in the hobby, and starting with some of the own publications, Up North Productions, and a rookie card checklist 31 years ago, if you can believe it. And, just kind of kept writing and building from there. And, I'd like to say that, maybe I left the hobby, so maybe a little quieter the last 15 years, but, had a chance to kind of circle and really get into the book publishing. And, obviously working on 3 new books right now, which are going to be coming out soon. But the O-Pee-Chee one for sure was a labor of love. And, went back to a magazine article in 2005 when I was writing at Canadian Sports Collector, and turned it into a book. And yes, I actually did start with the Parky's book. So Parky's was kind of the model that I played with. And then once I had done that, then it was like, hey, let's get the O-Pee-Chee book together and put something out. So 2017 was the first one. And, again, this year I just had a chance to play with some color. And once I started playing with color, the first thing that kind of popped back to my head was, what if I went back to that O-Pee-Chee book and just spruced it up with some color, some more pages?
Right on. So that's awesome. There were some questions. People, Andrew wanted to know, is that the history of O-Pee-Chee? Yeah, it pretty much is, Andrew. Tampa. I held the book up. Here it is, guys. And again, you'll see a link in the chat that I just put in where you can just click over and see all of the books that Richard has out for sale right now. He's working on more, but let's go back to the early 90s. You're in high school. Tell us about the first card shop you worked at and how that maybe started this whole journey for you.
Yeah, and I would say before that, even I started kind of doing my own price guide. If you remember some of the Beckett's and Canadian Sports Collectors, which is the mainstream stuff, I started doing a small little price guide which had all the food issues, which back in the early 90s was big. And from there, it just happened that about 500 meters down the road from where I lived, there was a sports card shop in Toronto, in North York, and I think it was called Boomers. It's been that long, and worked there kind of my last year of high school. And that was the 92-93 season when you still had packs for 50 cents, and parallel cards were just coming out for the first time. So very different world, and Bowman kind of coming out as a premium brand. So it was a neat time, obviously, to be kind of in the card hobby and kind of see what was kind of coming out at the same time. So
nice. And then, so skip forward 1994, you're now in Ottawa. And I mean, if you've been to the expo, anyone watching, listening, if you ever been to the Sport Card Expo in Toronto, you probably would, if you don't know him, you'd recognize Hans from Game Breakers. I mean, he's been set up there for decades. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, and it's the funniest thing of how it worked out. But so I moved to Ottawa and Carleton University Frosh Week, and one of my Frosh leaders is Hans Tan, and no joke, that's how we met. Kind of over the course of the week at some pub or something like that, came up that he had a sports card shop and said, you got to come out and check it out. And I was new to Ottawa, and after maybe 2 or 3 other pub meetings at university, kind of January, finally made my way out there, and started working there shortly thereafter. Never forget too, obviously he had good sense. And one of the first things he did was, he showed me a Team of Solani rookie card, 91-92, and he ripped it in half. And I said, you got to remember that it's just paper, right? And, so that kind of eye-opening piece, but there were 3 or 4 of us that worked there at the time. And Joey's kind of back there now too. And it was well organized, and that was my university life, was working with hands, and still to this day good friends with him and some of the other shop owners here in Ottawa.
So how did you really break into the whole writing thing with that's led to all these books? And you've worked in the industry. So what's your earliest industry role?
Yeah, so really it's high school. Coming out of high school, just starting to write as much as I could, and helped with a student sport newspaper, then actually a student newspaper in my last year. And around the time at one of the card shows, met this was even before Jeff Morris, and kind of their first or second year when Canadian Sports Card Collector was still a newspaper. And from there they kind of had seen what I was doing on my own, these little hockey card publications. And they got me writing an article about 91-92 score or something silly like that, which again, those were all the new sets that were kind of coming out in the day, and pretty exciting, and action photography and all those things that you didn't have in the 1980s. And it just kind of grew from there. And in the 90s, obviously when Jeff Morris took over Canadian Sports Card Collector, he got me starting in 94 with a regular autograph hound story. So for about 5 years, 94 to 99, when I wasn't at a card shop, when I wasn't at school, I was an English major, so I'd take my books and hang outside the Ottawa Senators games and just collect autographs and pick up stories, and that was a monthly article that I wrote for a good 5 years.
So how did you go from, because in our discussions you told me that you worked on the Charlton guide, and I mean anyone who knows hockey cards knows about the Charlton book. I mean, that book was around for a lot of years, well respected. It might have been even I don't want to say, like, I don't want to compare it to Beckett, but it was kind of a bit of a Bible up in Canada as far as hockey cards goes. Is that how you remember it? And what was your involvement with Charlton?
Yeah, and it's funny too, because as a high school kid too, I remember actually biking down to where Charlton was actually done. A gentleman by the name of Bill Cross, and they had bought the rights to the Charlton name, and were making this publication year after year. And to maybe connect the dots with some of the other shows or guests that you've had, Jeff Morris, when he left Canadian Sports Collector to go to Pinnacle.
By the way, Jeff, I just want to say Jeff Morris, episode 98 of Sports Cards Live, and we're on 202 tonight. So the man that Richard is, just to the audience, the person that Richard is referencing right now has been on the show before. That was, again, episode 98. You can find that in the archives if you want to go back. I'm sorry to interrupt. Please continue.
Yeah, no, musical chairs. He went and he worked with another gentleman, Baron Badesky, and they brought me in just as I was finishing up university. And at that same time, they had bought the rights to Charlton hockey cards. So I came in as the price guide editor for both the magazine and Charlton hockey cards. And it's almost kind of 2 rewrites on the book. Obviously, we got it up and running. It was, kind of a big, all day, all night just to get that first edition out with Trajan. And, a few years later, we actually, built a brand new database, which, basically put Charlton and Canadian Sports Collector, the same price guide, all in one, that was spitting out the 2. And, it's funny how it kind of came around, because, as a 17, 18-year-old kid, when, I went to see Bill Cross and, say, hey, is there any work? And, the question he actually asked me was, well, do you know anything about databases? And of course, I didn't know, but, by, 6, 7, 8 years later, I knew a thing about databases, and, that's how we built the Charlton. So.
Right on. So from Trajan and building Charlton, what happened next?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was there for a good 2-3 years, and absolutely loved it. We had a monthly magazine, both in English. We also had a French magazine too, as well as the Charlton. So we were kind of 3 publications that we're doing. And Trajan had everything else, from coin newspaper, a stamp newspaper, collectibles newspaper. And, both myself and my wife had moved down to St. Catharines, and there for a couple of years. And then, obviously you're covering the hobby, you're telling different stories in different places. And the NHLPA reached out, and they were looking for a new licensing coordinator. And a guy by the name of Nick Bedota, I guess, had suggested my name, and kind of clandestine, they got a way to get me down to Toronto for an interview. And the question that, it wasn't really an interview. The question they asked me was, I guess they had a player a day, and they said, can you tell me where Peter Forsberg was born? And I said, well, I can't say it, but I can spell it for you. And that was the extent of kind of the interview process. But yeah, that was 99 going down there. Actually, the end of the 98-99 season, because of all things, that was Wayne Gretzky's last week as an NHL player, was my first week at the NHLPA. So,
yeah, awesome. So, I mean, that there's a big part of what I want to talk about tonight is what you did while you were at the NHLPA. But I kind of want to save that for a little bit in terms of rewriting the rookie card rules. I mean, I'm fascinated, and it's just awesome to have you on to talk about that and what that whole process looked like and the impact of it and why and what the thought process was behind all these things. I want to get into that. But can you tell us a little bit about some of the other, like, what was it being the licensing coordinator? What type of deals were you looking at? What was your role there outside of looking at the rookie card rules?
Yeah. So really what, I was there to be the last set of eyes on all licensed product. And I think that's, probably why that question was, how well do you know Peter Forsberg? There's probably 30 players or so that, I can tell you still to this day, when they were born, how tall they were, what their height was. So everything from, checking the backs of trading cards, what images would go out, making sure which players were in different sets, that relationship with a different, card. And there were two of us at the start. It eventually just became myself after Nick left. Video games, posters, calendars, everything and anything. Before it would kind of go out, I had a counterpart at the NHL that would have been looking at, anything from, any NHL logos and anything like that. But of course, on, the NHLPA side, you've got a 300 card set, I'd have to kind of, take a look over everything there. And there wasn't, I think the biggest rule, obviously came when it came to images was, no tongues and no blood. At the end of the day, that they were licensed products, so it's not to necessarily, kind of capture a tiny second of what was on TV. But, this was something that somebody, was going to put up on their wall, whether it was a poster or keep in their collection. So there was still, you wanted still some sort of a nice look to the players at the same time.
So I remember, and I think a lot of people are aware of that pro set. I think we refer to it as an error card, the Paul Gillis blood on bloody nose error. Is that something that would have just slipped by the licensing coordinator who was there in 1990? Or what do you know about that card? And is it something that, even at the NHLPA licensing department, was that something that was known about? Was that a legend in the office when you got there?
Yeah, I guess, I think there's a Bob Probert one too. There's a few legendary images from the early 90s. And, I think there's a Thomas Sandstrom with his tongue out. So yeah, there were a few legendary examples, but really what happened was, before 1990 hockey cards, there was only, the one company. It was O-Pee-Chee and Topps. It was one set of images that were done every year. And when they brought in 5 licenses in 1991, the NHLPA, I think, was still a pretty small staff. And, so it was, the people that were there wasn't that position yet for a licensing coordinator. And then the other piece was in 1992, when the players went on strike just before the playoffs, a big part of that was that they wrestled away the rights to, to their own trading card, to their own images. And that was a big piece to the puzzle. So really the whole licensing kind of, that piece of work happened kind of, I guess, properly afterwards. And that's really where exactly you have those early examples from the early 1990s. And, even actually one thing which was pretty good too, if you remember the first Eric Lindros Flyers card in Upper Deck, it's actually his head placed on top of, Mark Recchi's body. And, Photoshop, it was actually a pretty good job. I mean, it's nothing like the 60s, 70s, hack jobs that were done in O-Pee-Chee, but That was a little bit of a no then. Where they kind of got to in 2000, I thought was pretty good. And it'd be interesting to know what they're doing now these days with Photoshop.
So, okay, couple of things. First of all, the Eric Lindros card you're talking about, is that the one where he's kind of looking off to the side like this?
Yeah, and it's
It's
almost
not an
like kind of
action
getting
shot.
up or something.
Is it an action shot?
It's like a quasi action shot. It's like he's
Okay.
kind of getting up.
Okay. Because I'm just thinking, like, does the public know that that's actually Mark Recchi's body, or did you just kind of let the public know this right now?
No, it kind of came out. I didn't know it when I was collecting it. So on first look as a kid, I didn't know. But obviously from a timing standpoint of he's just played his first game. How do you have a shot of him? And I think more than anything, I think the family was probably his dad was probably the one to put a hand up and say, "Hey, that's not Eric."
That's Mark Recchi. Now, this might be a silly question, but why is there I understand the no blood rule. Blood is, exposes violence, but what about tongue? Why no, like Michael Jordan is famous for tongue wagging. There are some cards with his tongue sticking right out. Why no tongue sticking out in hockey?
And the Michael Jordan is, I think, always the example that I always wanted to bug the guys at the NBA about. But really, when it comes to the hockey players, I mean, if you ever find that Thomas Sandstrom card where his tongue is kind of left or right, again, it's just because it's a poster. It's and Michael Jordan is probably an exception because the way he's got his tongue out, is not silly. It's ferocious. It's that power move. And I can think the same of a lot of sports. NFL, if you didn't have the helmet on, you don't get a lot of shots like that with hockey. But I would think that you would maybe make an exception with some of the Alex Ovechkin celebrations for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But the no tongue was more about making sure that the guy didn't look awkward, making sure that the guy didn't look silly or anything like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense to me. Okay, Mookie writes here, wow, that Lindros is a Photoshop. I had no idea that the Ken Griffey Jr. is also Photoshopped, the #1 card. Yeah, there's another one. Okay, that's interesting stuff. And we're gonna get more into the whole rookie card stuff. That's definitely interesting. Let's just go say hi to people who have joined us. Lapper, good evening to you. Oh, I also want to let everybody know Expo is around the corner. It's less than 2 weeks away. And if you're planning to come, the Thursday night Jack Astor's dinner that I organize and host is open to anyone who wants to come. You can bring a friend, bring some friends, whatever you want to do, bring your family. Please make sure to join us at Jack Astor's Thursday night after the Expo closes. I think that's a VIP preview evening, but a lot of people come Thursday night after that. Hello to you, Lapper, Jake Dahl, Jay-Z, T is here. Hi, T. Todd McDonald, good evening. Dan's Vintage, comments should be fine. Yeah. Jay-Z, very much looking forward to Expo. Can't wait to see you there, buddy. Mookie is here. Yes. Jeremy Fowle, 5-ball. Rage, I'm always here like an ambulance at a rock fight. What's going on, Rage? Jake's Toe, good evening. Andrew, definitely a Pavel Bure fan. I think he's talking about you. Are you a Pavel Bure fan? Oh, because your favorite, you're from Vancouver originally. Bure fan?
Yep.
Yep.
Yes.
There we go. Dan says, go Expos. Love the kid #8. Someone did also mention that he thinks you're wearing an Expos jersey, which you are. Bobby Burrell is in the house. Says, howdy, it's been a while. Richard, and we're gonna shout out Bobby a little bit later. So hopefully, Bobby, you stick around. Jake Dahl likes the Parky book. Willie T, welcome to the show. Good to see you. Andrew, yeah, super cool stuff. Jeff McMahon, what's going on? Jake Dahl wants to know, Richard, any plans on a Montreal Canadiens collecting book in the near future? I guess, what did you do one on the Leafs already? Because that would kind of be a 1-2 punch, I would think.
Yeah, it was in 2016. So actually, the new series, which I'm coming out in November, which is part of the collecting the top 100, and I actually started with collecting the top 100 Toronto Maple Leafs and collecting the top 100 Montreal Canadiens. So yeah, 2016 was when we did it, and I do want to do some more, team type books, and we are going to be looking at that in 2024 for sure. So.
Right on.
But of course,
Mike,
you've got to do the halves.
yeah. I mean, you got to. You probably even before the Leafs. No offense, Leaf fans, but I mean, 24 Stanley Cups. I mean, I don't know. It's crazy. Mike, what's going on? T has a lot of Expo cards, loves them. Here's a question from the professor. Does Richard think it's too complicated to bring new hockey card collectors today? And if not, what ideas might you have to expand the collector base? That's a big question, but knock that one out as you will, Richard. What are your thoughts? And is this something you think about?
You know, yeah, I think it still comes back to the love of collecting. It still comes back, and you know, I've kind of worked outside the hobby for the last 15 years, but it's never left me. You know, and whether it's books or anything like that, and you know, favorite teams. You know, I know the Expos are gone. I'm following the Padres, and you find different things to kind of collect, but you know, I think passion and just, you know, kind of that connection to the team is very important. And I was surprised this week, and I met a few people that were talking about friends that, you know, have been all over hockey cards, and so it's good to hear. But you know, again, I think it comes back to the sport, and it comes back to the athletes for sure.
Yeah, I mean, in Canada, we have the Tim Hortons cards, and I think that's huge because that covers that blankets the whole country. No kid in Canada hasn't seen that sign. I mean, everyone sees it. It's everywhere. But in the US, it's a different story. And I don't know, you know, I think Upper Deck is certainly working on that. I think the NHL would be working on it, at least getting the sport out there. But I don't know what else they're really doing. You know, there's Hockey Day in Hockey Day in Canada, there's Hockey Day in the US, or Hockey Card Day as well. Those are some good initiatives. But I wonder what else can be done in the US. We talk about that sometimes. Want to say hello to, here, Mike says, nice O-Pee-Chee locker box right over what is your right shoulder. Very nice. Jerry, good evening. Good to see you. Hobby Champs, it was Mark Recchi, not Mike Ricci. I think we were pretty, Mike, it was Mark Recchi. Sanderson to Orr, what's going on? He says, Jeremy picks up the tab every year at dinner. I actually don't, but thanks, Eric. Thank you for spending my money, buddy. But I definitely organize and invite everybody. Dan, what's going on? What's your favorite Gary Carter card, Richard?
All right. So first year I'm collecting, and I'm a catcher because of this. I just always loved the equipment and the 81 tops. And if I'm somewhere and I just happen to see it, I'll pick up an extra one every once in a while. But yeah, this was the legend growing up.
I remember buying packs of that year at the corner store with a little baseball cap in the bottom corner. Oh my gosh. Great. That's my connection to this hobby, is those trips to the corner store in the early 80s with my $2 a week allowance that would buy me 8 packs of cards, whether it was hockey, basketball, or baseball, at 25 cents each. I mean, and those little graphics that are burned into your brain, you know, like, you know what that's like, Richard. Clay Phillips, good evening. What's going on? And Kieran Crilly, greetings from Milan, Italy. Good to see you, Kieran. Welcome to the show. Gonna go to the Inter versus Roma Sunday evening. Right on. Hobby Champs, Gary Carter was the man. And Dan's Vintage says, a 78 O-Pee-Chee is a beauty too. Similar pose. Right on. Good stuff. Well, Leighton Sheldon has entered the green room, everybody. He is there backstage. And why don't we do our vintage spotlight segment, Richard? And I did, as everybody knows, I do ask both the guest and Leighton to come with something to ask each other and to blend in, to have a nice spotlight segment. So let's bring him on. Leighton, welcome back. It's as I said at the top of the show, as the young people are saying, it's been a minute since we've had one. There was no Sports Cards Live for 2 weeks. Here we are. Nice to be back. Good to see you again. You and Richard actually have some history. So welcome to the show, and I'll let you guys just say hi to each other.
Well, thanks for having me, Jeremy. It's great to see you. How are you?
How
are you guys doing? Sorry. How are you, Richard? It's good to see you. I haven't seen you, I think, in a long time.
Richard might be a little frozen on us.
Okay. I'm here.
There he is. Okay. Okay. Talk to Leighton. I'll let you guys go. So he asked you how you're doing, Richard.
Yeah, I might get this fixed, but things are great. And you know, I had to kind of, hey, back, I know that I've probably bugged you 3, 4, 5 times in the old days when you were at Leland's, and but to obviously watch kind of what you've done, from afar in the last 15 years with your business and your shop, and it's great to see.
Well, it's great to reconnect on here, and Jeremy, thank you as always for having me on.
Yeah, you bet. So, well, let's get into Leighton. You popped in about a minute or so ago. I think he's just fixing something on his phone on his piece. So we'll wait for Richard to come back. But I kind of asked you guys to come with something for each other, and unless you want to just take the moment now to let us know what's going on, anything you'd like to let the audience know about, with anything exciting going on in your world in the last couple of weeks. It has been a while since you've been on the show.
Yeah, it feels like a minute, but I appreciate you asking, Jeremy. And so, there you go, Richard. Great. Can you hear us okay?
Perfect.
Technical difficulties.
Okay, hit it. Go ahead, Leighton. Go ahead.
All right, sounds good. Well, in exciting news, real quick before we start chatting with Richard, I'm actually going out to the West Coast next week, and I haven't been to the state of Washington actually ever. So I'm excited to go out there, and I'll keep everyone posted. I've decided to do a vlog on social media. So basically, I'm going to be going out on Thursday of next week, and I'm going to just tape some video and take some photos each day, and kind of give you behind the scenes as to my nerves, what's going on, what I'm looking at, and all that good stuff. So I'll keep everyone posted.
Right on. Good stuff. All right. Well, let's get into it. Richard, do you have any question topic you'd like to raise with Leighton to just keep the conversation going?
Yeah, let's jump right into that age-old topped question. And when it comes to, the rookie card, which is, 3 or 4 players, or do you like, that first standalone card? And nothing against, my Gary card or rookie card, but, the 76, when it's that full image, I prefer that. Nothing against, Willie Stargell or Pete Rose, but, I prefer the 64, right? I prefer that first image, Nolan Ryan, the 69. So what do you like, and what have you been hearing from your collectors over the years?
Well, I mean, I think in a nutshell, Richard, that most of us collectors generally flock to the rookie card because it's the most valuable. And I just feel like it's so ingrained that, if you said to me, hey, like, what do you like the most? And you were only focusing on like what I already know, then I would say the rookie card. But I agree with you. And I don't think it's just limited to their first card, like by themselves. I think if you took a step back and you looked at like all the greats of the 50s and 60s or even earlier, it's often not their rookie card that is the best looking or the most aesthetically pleasing, but it's generally the most valuable. So I don't know if that's a cop-out, Richard, but I wanted to try to answer it as honestly and authentically as I could, because I thought about it before I came on the show tonight, because I had a tip off that, that was going to kind of be the question. And, that's my 2 cents on it.
Sorry, can I respond? Because I have some, I think it's a great question. I think it's a fun topic because it's one of those areas, it's a niche within the rookie card niche that actually lets you as a collector say, you know what, maybe I don't want that Carlton Fisk rookie, or I don't want the Johnny Bench or the Nolan Ryan or the Paul Molitor, even though I think Jack Morris is also on the Molitor. Is it Jack Morris that's also on the Molitor?
No, it's Trammell.
Trammell, right. Yeah. So, you've got all these the Pete Rose being a famous one. You've got all these multiplayer rookie cards. And I personally love the Pete Rose rookie. I think just the way they did it is really neat. But I love the second year Pete Rose more. I love the 69 Nolan Ryan. I love the 76 Gary Carter. And to me, I wonder, and this is where I'm kind of gonna ask you, Leighton, are you noticing at all an uptick in the interest for those first solo card? Cal Ripken's another one. Are you noticing any uptick in interest from your customers when you're at shows where people are like, I'm looking for a really nice 76 Gary Carter or a really nice 69 Nolan Ryan or something?
Well,
or one
I don't want to break Richard's heart, but not on Gary Carter. However, absolutely, the 71 Munson, people are asking for the 69 Ryan. And listen, Jeremy and Richard, is it a combination of they think they're undervalued and they also appreciate them a little bit more? Like, if you put everything else aside, how much more beautiful is the 71, either O-Pee-Chee or Topps Munson, than the 1970 where he has a shared rookie card? But, that isn't necessarily more valuable, although I guess the 71 and high grade is super valuable. But I do see some people, Jeremy, asking, I would say, a little bit more than like where we were 5 years ago, where no one really cared about a second-year Nolan Ryan.
Yeah. I think that is sort of the case right now. I think people are starting to look at the aesthetics of a card. Like, rookie cards are important. There's no doubt about it. That's what kind of gets the juices flowing. But that second year card, especially when it's their first solo card, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, another really good example of that, right?
Great example, Jeremy. So, Richard, I want to ask both you and Jeremy this, because I feel like at least Jeremy's certainly hockey, and you probably both know a lot more about hockey than I do. But what about this instance when you have like the 51 Gordie Howe, but then you have his first Topps card in 54? I love the Topps issue. And I'm not saying I don't like the 51, but it's super expensive. What, because someone's telling me it's his rookie, I have to buy it? What if I just like the 54 Topps better? So to your point, Jeremy, I think there's more of that going on than there was 5 or 10 years ago in the hobby.
Yeah, I do too. And just with that example, the 54 Topps Gordie Howe, the original PSA set registry, Mount Rushmore of hockey cards. Well, I think Joe Orlando hand selected them himself is what I think happened. And if I'm wrong, I'd be happy to know how that, what committee picked those Mount Rushmores for all 4 major sports. However, the Gordie Howe 51 Parker's rookie did not make the Mount Rushmore. It's the 54 Topps that made it. And I get it. It's a color card. It's full size. It's absolutely stunning. And the 51 Parkers, while they're an absolute legend in the hobby, they're not the most aesthetically pleasing overall. So I get it. Richard, what are your thoughts on all this?
Yeah.
You asked a question.
First off, the ultimate cop-out on the baseball question too is you can actually buy both. Yeah. And you get both the 68 and the 69 Nolan Ryan. That's the best way to go. And you know what? For me, the best, or the big 3 O-Pee-Chee / O-Pee-Chee Topps cards are, the Wayne Gretzky 79, the Bobby Orr 66, and that Gordie Howe from 54. And it's a gorgeous card. It was just done right. And it's the first time Topps was doing it. And nothing against the 51, but honestly, Gordie Howe should have had a rookie card in 46, 47. So it's not even like it's Terry Sawchuk. It's close to his rookie year, and same with the Maurice Richard. Those are the 2 cards really in that 51 set. And Maurice Richard probably, closer to where I am here, Ottawa, Montreal has greater meaning than the Gordie Howe in some places. But you know what? There's something super special about, when you got to kind of the full size cards. And, again, I think you have to have both, but, for sure, from that 54 Gordie Howe is one of the top 3 cards that Topps and O-Pee-Chee ever made.
Yeah, for sure. Let's just do a couple comments here. Orlando Collector's Dream calls out the 69 Johnny Bench, which is, because his 68 is the same year as the Nolan Ryan. It's a dual player card. Mookie is calling out the 68 Tom Seaver, another great call out right there. And Dan says and this is true, the 71 Munson is such a beautiful card, regardless of it being his first solo card. Just with those black borders, the condition sensitivity, that card is iconic, regardless of it being first or second year. It's its own piece of history in the hobby. I think that's a great way of looking at it right there. Kieran Crilly, who's with us from Milan, Italy, says rookie year versus rookie era. The Mantle Bowman versus Topps. The blur can be good. Reiterates to collect what you want, which the hobby has on this as far as Mantle goes. 51 Bowman being the actual one and only rookie, 52 Topps being the most iconic card in the whole hobby. For them, maybe the Wagner's up there, but a top 2 for sure. But the hobby has gone with the 52 as the most important card. He goes on to say, what I find strange is that iconic years don't have the same stature as rookie. That's something interesting too. Well, I got to ask, what are your guys' thoughts on that topic there? Like winning your first Stanley Cup, or winning your first championship, or breaking the whole all-time home runs record, or the season in which you hit your 500th home run, or this or that. There's so many milestones and achievements, but the years that those happen, those cards aren't ever talked about. any thoughts from either of you on, is that something that could become more important? There's there's a segment of the hobby that talk about playing days cards. They don't want to collect cards that were put out after the player retired. Fair. But what about this other way of looking at it? Like, Leighton, where do you stand on that? Is there anything to it, or is it just not something the hobby cares
I think
about?
for the vintage market, possibly, but I think for the modern market, just take like a Mike Trout, right? If he wins an MVP, what are you going to do with his 5th-year base card? You know what I mean? That's the problem. So I think, if you rewind a little bit, I think something that might be fun, Jeremy, and I think it's already happening with vintage cards. Let's just say a player won his MVP or he made an all-star appearance in his 5th year. Well, you take that 5th-year card and then you get it signed, because I collect signed cards. So I think there's a lot that you can do. And then just one more wrinkle about, because I like this whole debate. One of the things that I enjoy, Richard, because I collect signed rookie cards, but I've started to get that 2nd-year card signed, because what happens is you can get all these inscriptions, and it's a little bit nicer and neater. For example, on the 68 Ryan, I just sent out a few to the foundation, and I also added a 69 because I was thinking on the inscriptions, it's going to be a little bit nicer that we're not writing on Jerry Kuzman's head.
What about you?
That poor Jerry Kuzman collector who just wanted Jerry's rookie card. He's got to go for Nolan Ryan. But you know what? 100% with the modern cards, and had this conversation with Price guys, 20, 30 years ago, in terms of, once you got into the 1990s, who cares about a 5th-year card? But I think, there are some cases. I mean, one great example would be, Ozzie Smith, right? Played almost his entire career with the Cardinals. He's got an iconic rookie card with Padres, and that's my team. But, his 82 Topps traded is such a neat card. Like, if you were going to match up 2 cards, Hank Aaron, a 54 Topps, but, that 1974 Topps where it's got, his home run king, record, and it was done right at the start of the year. So there are some really neat cases sometimes, and, it's hit and miss. Topps didn't get everything all the time, but, sometimes that they kind of capture those moments. And, even Reggie Jackson, the 3 home runs, that's a highlight card in 78. And, it's a common, maybe, but, it's such a neat moment in that guy's career that, there is, sometimes you want those special moments in a player's career.
That's a good one. The Reggie Jackson's a great call out, because that card likely isn't it's probably, like you said, it's a common, but for the PSA set registry and people who are collecting all Reggie Jackson cards or that year's complete set, which then gives that card, probably more love than the common on either side of it in the set, because it's Reggie Jackson. But without that, a card like that is commemorating such a major event in the history of baseball is a dime, maybe 25 cents now with inflation. If you can even find one in a binder at a card show, which I'm sure you can at the National. So yeah, interesting stuff. Great conversation. I'm really enjoying this version of the vintage spotlight, Leighton and Richard. So I'm glad you had this question, Richard. Really led to some fun stuff. A couple more comments really quick. Leighton, if you want to just think about how you want to end this off, I'll give you another moment. But Andrew says the Yastrzemski 1960 is pretty amazing for sideways portrait paper. That is his true rookie, though. The 60 is the Yaz rookie, but it is a gorgeous. I have a copy. I was looking at it yesterday, actually. Beautiful, beautiful card. And the professor says the first single rookie cards, like Johnny Bench, have the rookie trophy emblem to help identify them as such, but those are actually quite misleading, because it says rookie all-star or rookie something, but it's not their rookie card. And for that, I was so confused on the Tom C. When in the 80s, I didn't understand the Tom C. I thought it was a Tom Seaver rookie. I remember my buddy literally I'm in grade 8. This is probably 1985. And I'm like, that's Tom Seaver's rookie. But it ended up not being his rookie card. I'll never forget that. Any thoughts on all that, Leighton, and anything you'd like to leave us with?
Well, I mean, listen, Jeremy, I kind of remember similar, not just the Seaver, but I remember discovering vintage cards as a kid, whether it be like it was my buddy, or, we were all kind of given a card, or we inherited a card or two. So I just remember like seeing a card from the 1950s for the first time, or a card from the 1930s, and just thinking like, wow, they really made cards like this and they still exist. So of course we all wish that we, bought a lot more of the Babe Ruth Gowdies when they were $250 or $500. But listen, it is the way it goes. But really great to see where the hobby is today. And it's fun that even, listen, we're on a Saturday night, we're talking and we're having like a really fun discussion about rookie cards and second years, and never thought this would be possible where we are, you know, after the childhoods that we did growing up, Jeremy Richards. So grateful for that, and really happy to be here and back on the Vintage Spotlight with you, Jeremy.
Yeah, same here. I just want to, Dan here says, I got the 68 Tom Seaver Rookie Cup from Vintage Breaks.
Oh, nice.
Thank you, Leighton. So pretty cool. All right, Leighton. Well, listen, great to have you back. Great to be back myself. And thanks for stopping by. Good segment.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Take it easy, Richard.
Take care, Leighton.
Right.
Thank you.
All right. Well, let's okay. Well, that was fun. Let's pick up where we left off, Richard. And let's do it now. Let's get into the whole rookie card rules part of this show, because I find it fascinating. I wasn't really, when we first talked about having you on the show, which is already a couple months ago, I didn't know that we were going to get to talk about this. So let's talk about it. Can you start, because this is an educational piece right here, and while it is specific to the NHL, and I'm curious your thoughts if it had any impact on any of the other sports which may have looked at what hockey was doing, because I think hockey might have been the first ones to really deal with this issue back in 90, 91, 91, 92, when we had the World Junior Championship cards in the NHL sets. And a lot of those players who are now Hall of Famers, their rookie cards have them pictured in their national team jerseys, like Nick Lidstrom and Teemu Selanne and Peter Forsberg and Ziggy Palffy, and the list, and Pavel Bure, another one in 1991. So why don't you just set the context for us, and like what kind of caused the issue, and just take us through it.
Yeah. Well, if I start with kind of when we changed it, because really there were no rules. Again, I mentioned a gentleman, Nick Bedota, who I work with, and we were sitting in our kind of bullpen this one day, and as licensing coordinator, I would get to see, before I saw the images, I would saw the checklist. And, so on my desk, I've got this checklist and I'm looking through it. And I just kind of said to Nick, I said, Nick, they've, talking about pushing the envelope here in 1999, but they've got a kid here who hasn't even been drafted in the OHL, and they want to put him into an NHL set. Now, this kid had played 1 year of OHL and he was an exceptional talent, but it kind of got us to chatting, and they've got to make some rules, that there's got to be, some sort of bar that the player has to make in, because, if you roll it back to those early 1990s, the whole reason that you had these junior players allowed into the cards, because, again, hockey was so new. And, right at that time, you had Eric Lindros kind of come in, and Score wanted to put Eric Lindros in their set, even though he wasn't in the NHL. And, again, because everybody and anybody was making anything in the early 1990s, there were a lot of draft pick sets, and there was a lot of opportunities to get these kids before they were in the NHL. So it was almost a way that it allowed the NHL companies to kind of, fend off these other minor league companies and have the best players in their product. And, you started with 1991, you had the young guns, you had, the star rookies, you had the World Juniors kind of come in. And, it kind of grew from there. And maybe, as the minor league companies started to go away, seventh inning sketch and everything like that, the World Junior cards just kind of continue to be popular. So, they just kept doing it. As that kind of grew, then you got to kind of the mid 90s. And now all of a sudden, you're not even worrying about that stuff, but you've got a chance to do the program of excellence. And young guns, actually disappeared in the mid 1990s. I forgot about this too. Like, the young guns were there when Upper Deck started, and, they just weren't there anymore, because you had the star rookies. When players actually made it to the NHL, their rookie card was 2-3 years earlier, and they were getting younger and younger. So mid 90s, you had Joe Thornton in the 96, 97. You also had then Vincent Lecavalier that came out in the 97, 98 set. And so when you got to kind of 98, 99, Vincent Lecavalier is drafted first overall, and there's no excitement in the hobby stores. There's no excitement in terms of, you've got Vincent Lecavalier in his first Lightning card, but so what? So, it came to kind of that day in 1999, and, I'm humming and hawing and asking the questions. And the kid, by the way, it was Jason Spezza, pretty big prospect. And they want to put them into this card set. And by now, Upper Deck was doing juniors. Topps was also doing CHL cards. And so it was a little bit of mess. And Nick just kind of piped up, and this is really what stopped everything. He said, why don't we just get rid of them? Why don't we just go back to the way it was before, and no more junior cards in our NHL sets? I mean, this is an NHL set. And that's what started it all off. I mean, from there, we just, started discussing and kind of talking to the higher ups, and away we went.
So what was the response like then from Upper Deck, who's making Pacific, who's making cards back in those days? What was the response like? Because that's a big transition for them. They're going to have to go a couple of years without having the next best player in the series. But if you think back to it, 1999, 2000, well, 99 for sure. I mean, sure, Patrick Stefan and Pavel Brendel were big names back in that year, but they ended up being, less than common. But then 2000 rolls around. Now you've got Havlat and Gaborik and a few others who actually were very exciting. But what was the response like from the card companies? And did you at all look to the other sports and what was going on in any other PAs whatsoever?
Yeah, I mean, for sure there was some hesitation, but there was also some genuine, excitement. And especially when we would talk to some of the hobby stores to kind of collect that feedback and that data. Pacific wasn't doing any juniors. They were over the moon. Upper Deck had juniors, and they were, very hesitant at first. Same with Topps. And, at the end of the day, it was great timing, though, because, as Patrick Stefan was, today is, injuries and everything like that. But he was actually the first NHL first overall draft pick, who was going to be entering the NHL and hadn't had a rookie card before, he played an NHL game. First one since like Roman Hammerlick. And so there actually was, a great chance that you could have done like a full shut off, no more juniors. We ended up coming to an agreement where there were 40 junior players that were allowed to be included in 99-2000, Pavel Brendel being an example. And, again, at the end of the day, it was that kind of transition which allowed you to move. But parts of the big hesitation was like, well, we've been doing it this way for so long, so why would we change? And really, it wasn't that, what we try to explain is we're not, taking them away. We're going back to the way that it used to be. And once they started to kind of, understand the principles behind it, and in terms of, when these players come into the NHL and everybody is talking about them and all the marketing around the NHL is around this rookie, you're going to have that opportunity to match your sales up with that product. And, everything from, well, what about Series 2, Series 1? You know what? Like we were able to kind of tick off all those boxes as we went along. And afterwards, once it all happened and then they started to see in action, then they kind of came back around and said thank you. Yeah, I mean, you think 4 or 5 years down the road when Alex Ovechkin came in and Sidney Crosby came in and when things really took off. And you have to remember in the late 1990s, rookie cards were still not, let's do everything. When we talk about other examples, 100%, you're looking at basketball and NFL being a great model where they were, maximizing these top round draft picks. And of course, unlike hockey and baseball, which, you didn't always jump right in to the big leagues when you got drafted, NBA had some fantastic rookies that were coming in, and you could see, how that matched up with the sales of the products. So yeah, I mean, it was a little bit of the perfect storm in terms of, it was a great time from the hobby. Rookie cards, there were sets that year that still, I was kind of, hey, this guy played 50 games. Why doesn't he have a rookie card? Fast forward 3 years, guy plays half a minute, he's got a rookie card. And so we were right on the tip of kind of the rookie cards really taking off in the early 2000s.
So we have Jason Spezza to thank then for, right? Is that accurate? We have Jason Spezza, who, I mean, when his rookie cards came out in 2003, I mean, that also coincided with the very first rookie patch auto in hockey cards, at least, was the the SP Authentic or Upper Deck Upper Deck Premier collection. Premier SP. I'm which
There
one?
was a few.
SPA had the Future Watch auto patch, but it was Upper Deck Premier collection that had really the first rookie patch auto, along with Steve Nash. Those were and Zetterberg. I mean, that was a big year, the 02-03 year. So without Jason Spezza and the card company wanting to put his card in before fresh into the OHL, this might not have got you to start asking these questions. And if you weren't there to ask those questions, would we still be there right now, do you think? Like literally, because Upper Deck right now, the loan licensor or licensee, look what's going on with Connor Bedard right now. When Connor McDavid came into the league, when Crosby and Ovechkin, these are big years for card companies. Do they have you to thank for making sure that everything lined up? I mean, I know you want to be humble about it, but literally, like, do they have you and Spezza to thank?
Yeah, and Nick Bedora, but Jason Spezza more than anybody else. And when he retired, I kind of tipped my hat because for sure he changed the hobby for good. And you know what? It was probably some unsuspecting kid at the Upper Deck company who put his name down on a checklist, having no idea that one, I knew who he was, and two, I'd been writing about rookie cards for 10 years maybe. But yeah, it's definitely one of I'm very happy that we were there in that moment, and what was going on in the left part of my brain, and then somebody else to say, well, let's just get rid of them completely, and that's what we did.
Yeah, the simple solution was the one that just ended up working with a 2-year transition period. So the card companies were a little challenged at first, but once they understood the big picture, they got it, and it's definitely paid dividends now, I would say. What about the card shops? What about, I mean, you're at the expo all the time. What about the hobby? Not the card companies, but what about the hobby? What's your recollection of the way the hobby responded at the time to these changes to the rules?
Very favorable. And of course, I had worked at a hobby store for 5-6 years, and so I could call up hands at Game Breakers. And one of the things that we did at Canadian Sports Collector, and afterwards, both times that I worked there, was we always wanted to kind of talk to the hobby stores and get their opinions, and because they are the backbone to our industry, in terms of they are a place that even I know that Hands is there and a store is open, and I want to waste an hour or something like that and just go see what's new. It's so important for me that he still has that shop in place. And same thing closer to me, Queen Lacal Sportif, and so talking to those industry, like, they actually knew, and they were ahead of the curve too, in terms of, yeah, this would be great, because the feedback was, yeah, Joe Thornton, you know what? Upper Deck has just launched a brand new brand called SP Authentic, and they've just launched a brand new brand like Upper Deck Ice, and all these high-end brands were starting to come into the marketplace in the late 1990s, and you had no rookie cards, right? 96, 97, yeah, but imagine if you had like Vincent Lecavalier when he was just all over the place, and if Pacific, Upper Deck, Tops, if everybody could have just had that rookie card that year, and they were missing out. And so the hobbies do that because they were the front line.
There's some people I know who I talk to who don't consider the 96, 97, is that the Le Cavalier year, or is that the Thornton 96 Black Diamond, Joe Thornton, the 97 Le Cavalier rookie card from Black Diamond? They don't consider those, or the Program of Excellence, they don't consider those to be a rookie card because they're not pictured on an NHL team. They weren't even with an NHL team in some cases at that point. So what do you think of that? Like should the hobby look to their first, Joe Thornton's first Bruins card or Le Cavalier's first Lightning card to be the rookie card? It's weird. I don't see it that way. To me, you're part of an NHL set, even though you're not in the NHL. That's good enough, and I consider those the rookie cards. But it's like the conversation we had a bit earlier about this. The first, it's not the same, but there are some similarities between, a multiplayer rookie versus the first solo card. I could see people saying, I don't want that rookie card from that era. I want their first card on their team, like the Teemu Solani, my all-time favorite player. His rookie card is pictured card number 21 from 91-92 Upper Deck in his Team Finland jersey, But the next year, he's got a young gun in his Winnipeg Jets jersey, but it's not a rookie card. And it doesn't get, I mean, neither cards get much love. There's just so many of them. But what are your thoughts? Like, what do you prefer for your collection? What do you see? Or is it just too late and it is what it is now?
Well, I think, those two panels, so you can picture both cards. You have to put your 91-92 Solani rookie card and his 92-93 right next to each other. 100%, if they're in an NHL or a WHA set or an MLB set, and we can get into too in terms of what happened after we started making these adjustments in our NHL, NHLPA rookie sets. MLB came with the MLB rookie card logo, and trying to identify things. And let's not even get into soccer because, that's a mess in terms of, there's so many different leagues and is it, in this league or that league? And, with hockey, I think it's pretty clear cut in terms of, 100%, in those 1990s, those are your rookie cards. The trickier one at the time that was you've had a previous guest, Dr. Brian Price, on when he was talking about his Parker's European sets. And, I've even seen it sometimes even with baseball when like, well, O-Pee-Chee baseball isn't a rookie card because it's not a major license set. Well, you know what? Canada, we have 2 MLB teams in the 80s. I think we were a fully licensed set. And the 94-95 Parker's European, when Dr. Price was talking about those sets, the day after they came out, we had them in our shop. So, yeah, they were full rookie cards. And Jerome McGinley being an example in terms of, if it's a full license set, whether it was distributed in North America or Europe, it's fully licensed by the NHL, NHLPA, that's the rookie card. And that's kind of where that description, I don't think has changed at all in the last bit. But like we said, collect both. Get both of them because 100%, I like the first Canucks card of Pavel Bure.
Yeah, collect both, right? Cover your bases. You think of all the great players in the early 90s whose rookie card is not with their NHL. Paul Kariya and Chris Pronger come to mind. I mean, as Pavel Demitra, remember that 92-93 year is just filled with Saku Koivu, filled with rookie cards of great players not in their NHL uniform. And then you mentioned Jerome McGinley, his SP Upper Deck, the first really high-end foil set, the Upper Deck SP set, which really is the root of SP Authentic and SP Game Used and all the different SP brands that have come out since then. It's I don't know. Peter Forsberg, I don't know how we feel about it. Well, Forsberg's actually got he's actually shown on draft day, so that one doesn't count. But yeah, it's it probably wouldn't even matter as far as value goes because there's hundreds of thousands of copies of these cards printed, but nostalgia and collectability, I think it'd be better if they were in their NHL uniform. So even though it took literally 8 or 9 more years for you to get there, you and your partner to actually ask the question and then do away with it altogether, I think we the hobby, especially hockey collectors, should be grateful to Jason Spezza and you guys at the PA in those years for straightening this out and really lining it up so that the rookie card coincided with the and card show, like Steve Menzie, who runs the Sport Card Expo coming up 2 Saturdays from now in Toronto. I mean, Upper Deck now, well, pandemic aside, they do their best to line up the release of Series 1 with the Expo. It's all tied together now, and that wouldn't be the case if you guys didn't do what you did. So I think there's a lot of people that it's not like we owe you a debt of gratitude, but we do. Gratitude meaning being grateful. I think we do owe you. We should be grateful to you for doing that when you did. And I don't know that a lot of Richard personally, I just don't know that a lot of people know that it was Richard Scott who was integral to that. So I'm happy to have you on today and let people know that guy right there has a lot to do with the state of the hobby, the state of hockey cards, and just how important that was to the card companies, the card shows, the card shops. And it's only important to all those entities because it's important to collectors. So yeah, thank you for getting that done because the hobby is so much more fun now, I think, because of that. And I wonder if part of the slowdown in the 90s, even though it was the tail end of the junk wax era, which was the overall hobby, I wonder if the hockey collectors, Canada hockey collectors, kind of their own breed in a way. I wonder if part of it was them getting a little bit tired of that. But I could be way off on that. What do you think?
You know what? And just going back to, thank goodness we don't have a Jason Spezza rookie card with the Mississauga Ice Dogs, or the Brampton Battalion. Actually, probably is what it would have been, or Team Canada. But yeah, I mean, so much was changing, and at the end of the day, it's been 20 years. It's been 30 years since Upper Deck and Score and Pro Set came into the hockey market, and it really hasn't been that long. So I mean, the hobby's constantly evolving, and so much was happening in those years in terms of whether it was the introduction of autographs in the mid 90s, the high end sets, and you got to remember, high end sets were still $10, back in the early 2000s. We didn't have the cup, right, and those big products were coming, I'm glad that we've got a little bit of both when it comes to you can buy, Tim Hortons, entry level, and, you can chase whatever type of Connor Bedard rookie card that you want.
Right. Exactly. All right. There's another thing that you did that I think helped to change the hobby. Well, helped to really change the direction, or help set the current landscape of the hockey. We're going to get to that in a second. I got one other sort of surprise for the audience, something that Richard Scott was integral in. But first, I want to go to Kieran's comment here. Hockey market feels slightly more conservative than NFL, NBA, and MLB. To what extent were strategic decisions taken for the sport in isolation vis-a-vis, or maybe versus even vis-a-vis other sports? So you might have touched on it, but as far as the rookie card rules, can you just elaborate a little bit more as to, you guys made this decision, but what impacted other sports and the way they were doing rookie cards have to do with it? You just mentioned that the rookie card logo is now happened after you guys changed the hockey rules. So was it more or less that baseball looked at hockey and thought we should do something similar? Did they do that in isolation? And also, like, how much did you guys look at the other sports when you did think about that?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that all the licensees and all the licensors spoke to each other, and especially because back in those days, Topps was doing 3, 4, 5 sports. Upper Deck was doing 3, 4, 5 sports. So both the card companies had that experience in terms of what did and didn't work in their different brands, and they would bring brands and brand names and ideas from basketball into football, or football, et cetera. And that goes back to the 60s. I mean, you have designs that were used by Topps, in Topps football, that was also used in Canadian football, and that was also used in Australia, or maybe in England. So there's always been that kind of cross knowledge of the North American sports, for sure, when it comes through. In terms of hockey, what we had with the World Juniors, the other companies didn't have to worry about that so much. Definitely NFL and NBA, no. But again, in the late 90s, early 2000s, the rookie cards were still people were still just figuring it out, right? It's still before LeBron James, right? But you've seen Kobe Bryant now in kind of the mid 90s, and you see kind of where people are flocking these things. We all knew about the Gretzky rookies and the old ones, but like cards that were coming out of products were really kind of starting to figure that out. And baseball was maybe had somewhat of that same, kind of dynamic. And really what it was Bowman. So in hockey, again, you had 3 companies that are saying, hey, we can't get Vincent LeCavalier rookie card because Upper Deck's got an exclusive. That's not fair. In baseball, Topps obviously did their individual signing, but they came out in 95, 96 when they really changed the dynamic of what they wanted to do with Bowman Baseball. And Bowman Baseball became the brand where, they would put out players 2-3 years before they broke into the big leagues. So whether it was a Scott Rowland or Vladimir Guerrero, in those mid 90s, they were getting their first card in Bowman before they were in Topps, even it's the same company, before, Score or Upper Deck could get them. And so you almost had the same dynamic happening. It's not so ugly to say that you can look back and see Vladimir Guerrero's rookie card in an Expos jersey, at least in Bowman, but nobody else could get them. So that was probably the bigger reason that MLB would have looked at creating some sort of MLB rookie card logo for it. Now, they still, I mean, there's still so much kind of how does it work in the last 20 years, because you're still getting the Bowman card and it's still kind of a rookie card, but maybe both of them are rookie cards. But you know what? It almost goes back to the old, Topps traded sets of the 80s, and should Topps traded sets be rookie cards, and let's come up with XRC, an extended rookie card, so that his first card in packs is rookie cards. And so it's never been a clean cut thing, and that just comes down to when you've got competitors trying to who's the first one going to be out with the Don Mattingly rookie card, which they could have done 2 years earlier. But so that's really what a lot of it came down to, is that competition between different card companies.
Right. Yeah. Interesting stuff. Okay. I have two scenarios I want to ask you about. A couple questions, a couple comments first. I want to say hello to Baseball Card Curmudgeon. What is going on? Andrew says so many Alexander Daig cards, and he's got a I think a Netflix documentary coming out, or maybe something coming out on Alexander Daig and the hype around him. Hopefully Connor Bedard does not follow in those footsteps. And he calls out Pat Falloon. I remember Pat Falloon's first card with the San Jose Sharks was that Pro Set SP card. You had the Patrick Waugh mask, you had the draft table card, the draft room, and you had the Pat Falloon and the Scott Niedermayer. Those were big hits. I had my card shop back then. Those were big hits back in those days. Okay, two questions for you. Which is the true rookie card? Michael Jordan, the 84 Star or the 86 Fleer? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, let's start off by, why didn't I buy any 84 Star Michael Jordans when they were in the shop in Toronto back in the early 90s? Probably like the stupidest thing I've ever done. But again, that one, I think I put both. And again, I think it's up to a collector. For sure, when I was putting together, the suggestion of a basketball rookie card, a multi-sport rookie card book about 20 years ago, I would list both in terms of, the rookie card and however you wanted to call the Michael Jordan. But for me, that 86, 87 Flair, the fact that it came out of packs as opposed to team sets, the allure of just being able to grab it, open a pack, not know what you are going to get. The Michael Jordan Flair is the card to have when it comes to Michael Jordan. So I know I'm not answering the question outside of saying both. And yes, the Star is a rookie card. You wish you had Flair around earlier, but you know what? You see somebody cracking that box of 86, 87 Flair, and you see Drake pulling out the Michael Jordan out of a pack. I mean, that's magic right there.
Yeah, there's no excitement if he's opening up a team pack of Star. So I've, for a long time, felt it's the Fleer card. The 84 Star didn't meet the requirements of being a rookie card. And then I think to myself, listen, these are all out of their packs by now. Sure, there's some unopened packs of Fleer left out there. There are some team bags still. I get that. But, once they're released from their packaging, does it matter? Here we are, 35, 40 years later. It doesn't matter how they were packaged back then. It was a different time. And I'm starting to think it doesn't really matter how they were packaged back then. The 84 Star was licensed and came out 2 years earlier. 86 wasn't Michael Jordan's rookie year, So to me, and it's also a major league card. It's not like, Brett Hall's 88, 89 Topps and O-Pee-Chee rookie. I think there's 4 years of stats on the back of that card, but he didn't have one until his fourth professional year. But we don't look at the Minnesota Bulldogs or whatever it's called. That card is his rookie card. It's not a major league card. The fourth year, yes, it's not a rookie year, but it was the first professional card, the first NHL card. So to me, I'm starting to lose. I'm starting to not put as much emphasis on the way the card was released in its day versus, was it licensed? Was it could you get other players on other teams from that same manufacturer? So I'm leaning towards, for me, to reversing it. Yes, the 84 Star is the RC. Just technically, I'm with you though. Have both. They're both great cards. And the 86, might still be the card to have. Just like the 52 Topps Mantle is the card to have, even though it's not the rookie. The 51 is the rookie, but the 51 came out of packs. The 84 Star did not. So to me, is that the only difference? And if so, does it matter? They measure the same. So I'm starting to feel like the 84 is the rookie. The 86 is the first Fleer card and probably the more iconic one, and that's okay.
You nailed it there with Mickey Mantle example. Bowman, Topps. At the end of the day, that first top set, that first Mickey Mantle. And yeah, I mean, people forget. I mean, they maybe don't give Star enough credit. They also did MLB cards in the 80s. And just because it wasn't a pack, it was still fully licensed, right? For heaven's sakes, we had cards come out on the back of Kraft dinner boxes in Canada in the 1990s. But 100%, you've got to consider the Star rookie card. You can't have a book without that listed. But you like to have that 86, because it is so iconic.
So I have another scenario. Okay, so there's that one. The other one I want to ask you about is Wayne Gretzky. We've got his 79 Topps and O-Pee-Chee, but you've also got the Sportscaster, the oversized. I don't really like calling it a card. The oversized item. I guess it's a card, just an oversized card, which I believe, and I'm not even 100% certain, but I believe that's from 1978 or it's a year before, I believe. What's his rookie? Is his rookie card truly the 79, which is, and someone mentioned that Mitch Grotman mentioned to me too, that the 79 O-Pee-Chee Gretzky doesn't even picture him in the NHL. The picture of him is from the WHA. So does that, and which I think is still a professional league, that to me is okay, right? WHA, the rookie cards that came out of there, like Mark Howe, for example, are true rookie cards. But what are your thoughts on Wayne Gretzky? And I know that there's no changing the hobby at this point, and I'm not trying to. I love the 79 card, plus it's standard size, really standard. Sure, 54 Topps and 52 Topps baseball are bigger, and you got 69, you got tall boys and all that, which are, all they made in those years. So they're, I believe, actual just fair cards, fair rookie cards. But the Sportscaster, where do you fall on the Sportcaster?
Yeah, the Sportscaster is fun, and technically it's a multi-sport set anyways. I mean, if we're trying to toss things up, and it was released over a number of different years, it's definitely a very cool card. But there's no question that 79, that's your rookie card. And the Topps probably would have come out start of the year, August, and then the O-Pee-Chee one, which would have been released in January 1980. That's a hard line. But the Sportscaster is fantastic, and there's so many different variations, and they were kind of released over different periods of time too. But that rookie card is iconic. And one of the tricks too that we talked about, Topps being important and Fleer, that brand being important. The other trick always with the Star card or the Sportscaster is, what's the authenticity of it? And same way, the Fleer Jordan rookie card has been, counterfeited lots of times, and same with the Gretzky rookie card. You're going to have that with any popular, expensive card. But, there was always a little bit of a trust value too when it came to Fleer versus Star, merited or not. In the 1990s, that was kind of what I would hear in the shop in terms of, what about the Star cards? They were cool, right? But yeah, when it comes to hockey, let's not mess with the Gretzky. I mean, that's the king right there.
Yeah, I know, and I don't think the Sportscaster is it's a different collectible to me personally for the way I approach the hobby. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on it because I've heard some people say that that's his rookie card, and I said, no, it isn't. I don't think it is. What about this? And I'm curious, even for the audience listeners to think about too. You just said it. The Topps cards came out before O-Pee-Chee cards came out, so there are some people now that are like, I want the first card of whatever player, whether it's Victor Wembanyama or Connor Bedard. I want the first card, even though it's usually ends up being the worst card of the year for most players recently. So if the Topps Gretzky rookie was released to the public 4 months before the O-Pee-Chee was, does that make it does that make it a more desirable card, even though we know the hobby could care less? All that matters now is they're both denoted as 7980. When they came out in the season doesn't matter. Just like in Upper Deck Hockey with the 20 brands it does now in recent years, it doesn't matter if it came out in October of 2023 or, forget about the supply chain issues or a year later, all part of the same year. Now, if the cup comes out a year later, a year after O-Pee-Chee or MVP does, it doesn't matter. They're both rookie cards. What are your thoughts? Yeah, is that the way it goes for you too, or do you think there's something to you can distinguish there?
No, definitely from the same year. But I was never big on, and I always heard it from the hobby stores too, when some of the sets started following into the next year. Right, you had 2009 set come out, and then 2008. Things were getting a little mixed up here and there. But I think brand is been, I think what we've seen is really what's golden. And so the Young Guns is a great example. And that was the other thing that came out of that 99-2000 rookie transition. Upper Deck actually brought back, and I forgot about this, Young Guns in 99-2000. And granted, they didn't have great images that year. Thank goodness, we've now evolved where they have the rookie showcase, so they can have some great, staged photos of Connor Bedard before he plays in the NHL, so you're not waiting. Back in those years, the card companies they would send me the artwork for a rookie card like the night before the guy was playing, and I told them, because as soon as the guy played on the ice, I'd approve the card and then it would go out. But yeah, I mean, if it comes out in the same year, and then I think there's for sure that you're waiting for certain brands each year, and whether that's an O-Pee-Chee, whether it's going to be the SB Authentic, whether it's going to be the cup at the end of the year in terms of the different brand levels that you might like. And then you'll have everything else mixed in, but we've seen it in the last 20 years that Young Guns rookie is very, very strong when it comes to the hockey card market.
Yeah, no doubt about that. All right, let's go to a few comments that have come in. The professor says, how do you understand as far as first rookie autos go, Jack Eichel signing exclusively with Leaf initially? And we've seen that a few times in not just in hockey, seen in other sports as well. But that's just, there's not much there other than, he doesn't have licensed autographs from his rookie year. It's just as simple. I don't know what more to say really about that. Professor also says, would the hobby and collecting benefit if more than one card company had licensing rights with sports leagues? I think this is the thing that every collector wants to happen. And I think would the hobby benefit? I think people genuinely believe that competition breeds innovation and better customer service and less quality control issues and all these things. So I think the answer to that is yes. But what do you think, Richard?
It's the good thing that I'm exactly now in the position I get to step back and watch. But 100%, it's very interesting kind of seeing what's happening right now. Obviously, Fanatics coming in terms of the push and pull with the Panini. There's a lot of interesting things. There is some merits in terms of when you had the one licensee, in terms of being able to clean up the hobby a little, perhaps, or maybe to put more focus, more effort in terms of the sales. But again, you like to have that kind of the different products and different ideas. I mean, there's a new card company that came out last few years called Parkside, and I can't get it here in Canada, but just like their hobby packs and the different items that they had in there and the look of the cards and everything like this. It was NWSL, but it was a fantastic product, $8 at the Walmart that I was picking up. So, again, to have those different companies come in, again, and you've had the guests on before that have talked about this, the stuff that In the Game was doing, of course, was always a big fan. And, I worked closely with them when we were doing the Be a Player products, Pacific. And you know what, everybody was, Pacific, this, that, I grew up in Vancouver. Kramer's Cards was actually the second card company I was collecting after O-Pee-Chee, right? So for me, there was a lot of great ties always to the Pacific Trading Card Company. So definitely innovation. Again, we can say what we want about the 1990s in terms of everybody was trying things and pushing the envelopes and understanding, distribution. At the end of the day, distribution is everything. I think, there's been great conversations of how important retail chains are, Walmart and everything like that in terms of the products. But I think at the same time, you can create different products for hobby. I know we're going to talk more about O-Pee-Chee, but there's stuff I wish they would do with O-Pee-Chee that they're not doing, right? And you wonder, if somebody else came in and created something, would they kind of, change the way they're doing things?
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. And this next comment from Bobby Burrell says, sometimes you have to draw a line. Otherwise, you'll have many other inference that people will try to squeeze into the rookie card mantra. And that's from 5 or 6 minutes ago. And I think he was really just talking about when we were talking about like when did it come out during the year and all the different things that could cause a card to be, or the whole rookie card, the definition for rookie card. Like, let's not overthink it, basically, because otherwise you could, it's a never end. It's a rabbit hole that you just won't get out of, I don't think. So I agree with Bobby on that comment right there. Okay, let's move on, Richard. So let's talk about 2005. This is the year 2005. You convince your boss that you had to go cover the Memorial Cup hockey tournament in London, Ontario, because there was something going on. Who was there? Why did you want to go? Take us down that road. This is a great story, everybody.
Yeah, and it's hard to imagine too that we didn't have hockey that season, right? There was no, but yeah, 2005. There was a kid coming out of Rimouski. I'm sure you guys have all heard of him, Sidney Crosby.
Five goals already this season, more than O-Pee-Chee.
Yeah, we wanted to have him on our cover, and definitely, I think with our magazine, we were kind of in that trend. Each year, we were doing the top 50 top prospects. That was already a regular story that we're doing. So, and the rookie cards were kind of coming out. And this again, I'd worked at the NHLPA, from '99 to 2001, and moved back to Ottawa. Started running Canadian Sports Collector and Charlton Hockey Cards and the sports division, and was putting a great emphasis, of course, on the rookie cards. And so that chance, everything was just lining up. And so there were two things I was looking at. The bait, of course, was Sidney Crosby. Chance to put him on the cover, go to London, cover him at the World Junior Championships, build a story around that, and our annual top prospect story. But the other piece, which really intrigued me, was a chance to go down and do something O-Pee-Chee. And so with that trip, I actually had a chance to sit down on a couple sessions with Gary Corrine. And Gary Corrine, for those that don't know, he was the president of O-Pee-Chee, had started working at the company in 68 when he joined what was at the time his father-in-law's company. 81 became the president and owner of the company, and ran it up until 94 when they sold everything to Nestle. So the idea behind it was to have a 5-part series, which in our magazine. And I kind of touched on, there was a story on the history of the hockey cards, history of O-Pee-Chee baseball, history of O-Pee-Chee entertainment, history of O-Pee-Chee CFL. But a lot of it just kind of came from that sit-down conversation with Gary Corrine.
All right. So you go to the Memorial Cup, you cover it, and what happens next? Because there is a pretty cool okay, as I'm referring to my notes here, because I want to make sure that we set this up, properly. But you go there, you cover the tournament, you get you run the cover story on Sidney Crosby, but the biggest thing that came out of your meeting with Gary Corrine was what? And so again, you did. I just want to, you kind of went through this really quickly, but O-Pee-Chee was located in London, Ontario, where the Memorial Cup was in that year. So a lot of things had to line up properly. The stars all had to align for this to happen. But you went and met with Gary Corrine. What came out of that is what I was alluding to earlier, that helped to shape the landscape we currently have?
Yeah. And the small nugget that we'll all forget too was that the London Knights actually had a very good team. So Sydney didn't win the Memorial Cup that year. Corey Perry and the London Knights actually won it. But when it came to 2005, it had been 10 years since O-Pee-Chee had stopped making hockey cards. And in those mid-1990s, what happened was Topps basically had always had that relationship with O-Pee-Chee, and they continued to make O-Pee-Chee. And initially, it was a parallel set here, and then, they brought back a brand. So the O-Pee-Chee brand still lived on, even though O-Pee-Chee wasn't making them. So for 10 years, from 1995 to 2005, Topps was making O-Pee-Chee cards. And then the lockout happens. And what happens in 2004-05, we were just talking about it, where all of a sudden, no more, one, no more NHL, but then two, the NHL and NHLPA, they came up with the NHLPA, sorry, came up with an exclusive agreement with the Upper Deck company. And so in 04-05 and going for the next 5 years, there were only going to be Upper Deck hockey cards. There were still going to be Panini stickers, but when it came to trading cards, that was it. And so the big question in the hobby was, well, what about O-Pee-Chee? We're missing O-Pee-Chee, and well, everything else, but O-Pee-Chee that we've been collecting every single year is no longer around. And so, kind of that was on my to-do for a question standpoint to find out what the status was and, what was going on. And, outside of, great time, he showed me kind of, the original cards he had and everything like this. And it came up and he said, I'm a free agent. And it basically kind of came down to that in terms of, through doing the story, we learned that he actually owned still the rights to O-Pee-Chee. So even though Topps had been making them for 10 years and Topps no longer had an NHL license, Topps didn't own O-Pee-Chee anymore. So we weren't waiting for Topps to make O-Pee-Chee. We were waiting for somebody, and of course, Upper Deck was the only card company to step in and start making O-Pee-Chee. So timing wise, for those that don't know, that the Memorial Cup and in the spring, and then you've got a Sport Card Expo shortly after at the time. This is, when it was May as opposed to April. And, very, very quickly, I'm having a hello to Carvin Chung at Upper Deck. And, hey, here's the scoop. When I write this story, O-Pee-Chee's a free agent. You should give him a call. And 100%. I mean, for a kid that grew up collecting O-Pee-Chee, when I saw that they had picked up the license and brought back that brand, it was, it's something I'm very, very happy about.
So again, I mean, you and all the stars aligned, but here you are having this conversation with Gary Corrine, the owner of O-Pee-Chee, but there's no O-Pee-Chee cards being made. It's 10 years since they were made, but he owned the brand. And you say to Upper Deck, Carvin, who is the first guest ever on this show on Sports Cards Live, you say to Carvin, you might want to talk to this guy and see if you want to do something with O-Pee-Chee. And what was Carvin's response? I mean, we know what happened. Obviously they did it, but what was he like, oh, think about, Carvin can keep his cards close to his chest. He might have been, thanks for the idea, I'll think about it. Or he could have been, oh, did you see his brain starting to spin, or how did that discussion go?
Yeah, you could see it. And obviously I'd known Carvin for many years from, working at the PA and doing our magazine and obviously he advertised with us. And it took a year and a bit for everything to get worked out. And as we learned afterwards, they didn't just, loan out the O-Pee-Chee brand to Upper Deck, but Upper Deck bought them full out. So Gary Corrine was now completely out in terms of owning O-Pee-Chee, but Carvin was smart. Carvin knew what, O-Pee-Chee was. Carvin knew how important it was to the Canadian marketplace. So, it was very important to have him in that position. So you didn't need to explain anything to him. And, again, you've had guests on before when, Jeff was talking about, when he was down in Pinnacle and having to explain who Paul Henderson was and, take, however many measures, but Carvin, no, he knew what O-Pee-Chee was. And so it was a great fit.
Yeah. Well, and here we are in O-Pee-Chee. They put out O-Pee-Chee and they put out O-Pee-Chee Platinum now, which is a lot of people's favorite issue every year. One of my top favorite issues every year that comes out. And so that's awesome, man. I think it's interesting. You're one of these kind of behind the scenes guys that, aren't talked about a lot, but I told you the other day, I said, I think you're going to get some calls now from some other people that are going to have you on their show to talk about this, because you have some insights and experiences. Needs to be documented. This needs to be memorialized. You're doing it yourself in your books, but it's nice to do it, on video now, which is, kind of where I think YouTube's the second biggest search engine in the world. So, it's good to get it out here. And I look forward. I know you'll be on other podcasts coming up, and I look forward to listening and watching those myself. So two really interesting things that you had a direct hand in, the rookie card rules, and O-Pee-Chee being, you don't have that sit down with Gary Corrine. Who knows when he would have gotten the energy to get up the motivation to go do something with that brand and that license and maybe approach upward. Maybe he never does. Maybe it just dies with him. Who knows? But really cool stuff. All right. Couple of comments here. Dan, you held up your Gretzky rookie, says you don't see many raw Gretzky rookies. Let's see it again. Let's see your raw Gretzky rookie that you held up a few minutes ago there.
See if I get so
Yeah.
As a kid, and you can see how nice and tattered this is. I started collecting in 80-81, and one of the first gifts I was, at 5 years old, a shoebox of 79 80s and some 78 79. So this is, I've had another one since, but this is the first one I've always had, and don't care. I've got it in a holder, but I pulled it out tonight so that you don't get the shine from, kind of the glare and everything like that. But this is, still the image. So very grateful to, he's passed on to, friend of the family that, kind of gave me this shoebox and, used this image, countless times on magazines and books and everything like that. But this is, this is the real thing. This is, sorry, sportscaster. This is the rookie card.
I want to just edit Dan's comment here to, you don't see many raw Gretzky rookies getting barehanded anymore. Like they're always in a sleeve. No, Richard Scott takes it out of the holder and holds it in his hands to make sure everybody can see it nice and clearly. Yeah, he's not messing around. Good stuff. Andrew asked the question, has there been recent hobby chase for first year hockey panini? I think that happened with as Prism became a bit more and more popular across basketball. I think it did spread a bit into hockey, Andrew, but I don't think it's a major anything that's really driving things right now. But it could happen. It could happen. Maybe it will after you ask that question. Have you noticed anything, Richard? Any comments on that?
Well, it's Panini, of course, is such a big company, and I'll take the moment. So we kind of hinted earlier that the next 3 collecting books I've got coming out, collecting the top 100 Topps baseball cards. They'll be in late November. They'll be collecting the top 100 O-Pee-Chee hockey goalie cards. So of course I've done already the top O-Pee-Chee cards, black and white, 5, 6, 7 years ago. I'm playing with color, so that will be, and it's a new size, a 5x8 that I'm working on. But it actually started with collecting the top 100 Panini FIFA World Cup stickers. And after Jeremy and I connected, that's when I came up with, hey, well, I want to do tops now. And so this one kind of slipped to number 3, and that will be out kind of, maybe late November. But you do see interest there in terms of a first Pele Panini sticker, a first Garincha, first Eusebio, first Johan Cruyff. Like there's interest there. But when it comes to hockey, not so much. And again, it just comes to that heritage. You've got the heritage of Topps baseball cards for many, many years. Panini World Cups, you've got that heritage, since 1970. Every 4 years, people are buying that. But it doesn't have the same heritage in hockey. And yes, I was a kid that grew up, collecting the O-Pee-Chee sticker albums, which were made by Panini originally. And then 87, Panini started making them themselves. And Gary Corrine has some interesting insight on that stuff too, because for those that don't know, in the early 80s, the collecting stickers, was going beyond, like people were forgetting about hockey cards because we didn't have foil. We'd have all the fancy stuff, but stickers were the thing when we were kids.
Oh, I remember. I put that sticker album together in 82, 83, 84. Oh yeah. That was recess, trading those with the other kids. I did the cards too, but I remember the stickers. I think what Andrew was talking about here though was the 4-year Panini card run from 2010 to 2010, 11, 12, and 13. I think that's what he's talking about, Andrew, versus the stickers. Correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew. And my answer stands for that, but I'm glad that Richard gave us the perspective of the stickers because there were Panini hockey products back in the 80s as well. Jerry says, what do you think of the cards from the Pee Wee tournament in Quebec? Are they considered a type of rookie card? I don't think so. Richard's shaking his head. So no, yeah.
But they're great.
They're odd. I consider them like an oddball sort of thing. What about you? Yeah.
Yeah. They're like junior cards. 7th inning sketch. If you're a fan of that player, that you're going to want to collect a little bit of everything. So, and the Quebec Pee Wee Junior, obviously a lot of great players that come through it. Mary Philippe Poulin, Patrice Bernier. So not just the NHL players, but people that have gone on to do other things. And so it is a neat set. But no, it's not a rookie card.
Agreed. The professor says, do you have an opinion on e-pack hockey collecting?
You know what? It's interesting because it came out probably 05, 06, 07, 08, kind of after I was heavily involved with doing the magazine. So I never got to write stories about them. I did play and try a little bit with them. And it's for some people, not for other people. I still like a physical product. For heaven's sakes, you guys just saw me handling my Gretzky rookie from 79-80. I still like that touch and feel, but at the same time, some of them are pretty neat. And whether, you look at some of the, I looked and seen some of the early Upper Deck ones where you can actually open a pack, and there's different variations there too, in terms of whether it's something you're paying for or whether there are things too which are free. Again, I'll come back to Panini. Panini actually do one of the best e-collecting products, every 4 years with the World Cup. And it's, you don't pay for anything, but there's bonuses and everything like that, from Coca-Cola to, if you did open the packs and everything like that. So yeah, it can be done well. And there's, just like physical cards, there's different levels, whether it's free or whether you're paying for it.
Right on. Okay, let's do a couple things here before we start to wrap up. We have a couple more things to cover still, but I just want to share with everybody. So I showed at the top of the show your O-Pee-Chee book. So I bought this one. I think I just ordered from Amazon probably in 2017 or 18. The first version of the O-Pee-Chee hockey card story, available on, well, I think it's still available probably on Amazon, but this just came out. You were kind enough to send me a copy, the updated, the 90th anniversary edition. And it's nice. It's lots of stuff in here. Look on the back. You've got, I asked Richard, is this image your box behind you on this episode right now? And he said, yes, it is. So that's kind of something really cool. There's that exact box right there. But if you just do a quick flip through, lots of information, lots of colored pictures, something for every collector right there. You also, you had a magazine back in 2009, I believe, the Want List. And this was the premiere edition. Is this? Yeah, this premiere edition. I had this back in the day, but you sent me a copy of it as well. So why don't you just let people know what was the Want List? Where did it come from? And will we ever see something like it again?
I loved it. It was a great little project. And the history-wise there was after I had left in 2006 from working at Canadian Sports Collector. That magazine had just run its course. It was over. And the publisher kind of came to me on three, what can we do with this outstanding brand? We still do our coin news, we still do our stamp news, but we don't want to still do a sports magazine. And I remember writing, 3 or 4 different ideas for them. And number 5 was, I'll buy your client list, and I'll start something new. The premise behind it was very much to do something that hadn't been done before. I've been writing price guides forever, and I wanted a publication that was 1, color, and 2 was kind of connected to the hobby, and 3 obviously was not price guide based but was story based. So I had a lot of fun with that. It was actually my wife who was running a lot of the day-to-day in that, and I would do the writing, which is something I've been doing my whole life, while I was obviously wherever I was in the world with other work. But then she went back to school, so it ended up being I had kind of a 3-year or 7-year plan in terms of how that would play out. And we went 3 years, and we did 13 issues. We did also a couple special issues, which were fun. One of the cool things we had done at Canadian Sports Collector was come out with a hockey almanac, something which didn't just price the trading cards. And this went back to what I originally did with up north as a teenager was, what about, the food boxes, and what about magazines? And, you can't see it here, but I collect books, right? And game worn jerseys and autographs. And so we had come up with, an almanac edition, which kind of covered and had everything in there. So, and when I bought, or when I started the want list, I had bought all the content from Canadian Sports Collector, which included that, the O-Pee-Chee story, which, when I started switching to doing books, turned that into a book. Obviously with the almanac was fun to do, which was a price guide. So I kind of had a black and white price guide, and we had the magazine too at the same time. So it was, one of those staples, but I guess you could say it was the first hobby publication in color that wasn't a price guide. It was just stories. And, again, fast forward 13 years now, I mean, the stuff that you're doing, like the fact that we can get all these stories out, on YouTube, and there's different channels to do this. Like, we didn't have those options 10, 15, 20 years ago. Unless, when I did my first book, the Wayne Gretzky book, you had to pre-sell so many copies. You had to make sure that you were going to, sell so many chapters. I had to do the book tours and everything like that. But today you can do things many different ways, which is fantastic for storytelling.
No doubt. You mentioned in there food issues or something about food. I want to bring back into the show Bobby Burrell, because Bobby is someone who, you remind me a bit of Bobby in that you've just been committed to preserving the history of hockey in books. Bobby's on the Vintage Hockey Collector, a couple of volumes. He's got a new app coming out. He's now part of the Hobby News Daily, hobbynewsdaily.com. Everybody check that website out. Filled with articles and more. Bobby's writing for there. Do you know Bobby? Tell us about your experiences with Bobby, and kind of have you ever, leaned on him for any information for any of your stuff?
Bobby, you're going to have to listen to this, because Bobby, you are the king. So 100%. I mean, when we did magazines, when we did stories, I always loved having, at least 3 different voices and giving a voice to the hobby. But time and time again, we would come back to Bobby. And Bobby also wrote for Canadian Sports Collector after I left in 2006. And he's just such a wealth of information. And, I always had his first edition. When he came out with his second edition, I actually bought it. I didn't want to read it until I just got my O-Pee-Chee book out of the way, and then kind of came back and looked at it. But I mean, so for those that don't know, I mean, this is the first book that he did, which I still have, but there's some great people in the industry that know a lot, and we've learned so much more in the last 20 years. And when we get to about the O-Pee-Chee book from the first edition, second edition, in between I did this a full O-Pee-Chee checklist of all the different sports cards, hockey cards, non-sport, and everything you could find. But we have images, we have eBay, we have auctions, right? So when I was doing magazines in the 90s, we didn't have that library. We have that library. And then you layer on top of it people like Bobby who actually chase these stories and have found some great stuff, whether it's on Parkus, whether it's on Peachy. I had a great chance to sit down with Gary Korean. I would have loved to have had a chance to sit down with Don Urquhart, who was one of the executives at O-Pee-Chee for many years. And there's questions that have come up, since I've spoken to Gary in terms of, what about this and what about that? And so, it's so important that we kind of keep those storytelling, because there's still a lot of things that we don't know. Right. And,
I was flipping through this book earlier today, and page 5, I noticed this little graphic I haven't read it yet. The little graphic here, 1 cent gypsy gum. And I know that, look what I have. I have an original box of 1 cent gypsy gum. It's empty. It's got styrofoam in it, but I got this from Bobby Burrell several years ago. And, it's just interesting how there's so much, like, the web of the hobby, the people. You have a lot of respect for Bobby. I obviously do too. I have for many years. And I've been fortunate enough to acquire some really special pieces from him. This is not hockey cards. It's not hockey, but it's O-Pee-Chee. And I love the history of the hobby. And O-Pee-Chee is a big part of that, if not the most important brand to me, to a kid who grew up in the 80s busting packs of O-Pee-Chee hockey for 25, 35 cents each, chewing that gum, putting like as many pieces in my mouth at a time as I could. So to find one of their first gum products, and I forget what year this is from. Bobby told me when he thinks it's from. I don't remember if it was the 50s or the 60s or even the 30s. But this is, to me, is super, super cool. It's, he filled it with styrofoam, shrink wrapped it to preserve its form. And this is, I love that. And then the other thing that I got from him that I've shown before is this little O-Pee-Chee Bubble Boy. This is a really heavy little statue, pewter, with the little boy blowing the bubble gum. And I think Bobby told me that there were maybe 11 or 12 of these made. They were given to O-Pee-Chee executives, perhaps. And it says, you can see O-Pee-Chee is engraved right there in the side. And I feel very fortunate to be able to have one. When Bobby came out to the Summit show in Edmonton, the first one, probably 12 years ago now, he had a booth really just displaying history of the hobby. And he had one of these bubble boys. And I just fell in love with that thing. I was like, oh, I got to have one of those one day. And I thought, well, I'm never going to get one of those. And then I'm talking to Bobby a few years ago, and he has a second one, and he sold it to me. So just cool stuff. Bobby says, thanks for the kind words, Richard. The app, his new app, drops this Monday, everybody. This Monday. More information out there, so check it out. And Bobby, you should let people know where what's the app called? Is it just called Vintage Hockey Collector? What's the app called? Please put it in the comments, Bobby. Hello to you, Chris C. Hello to Joe Perot. What's going on? And Bobby lets me know the Gypsy box is from the 50s. Well, that's older than me, so pretty darn cool right there. I also want to ask you about Needham. The app is called Needham, everybody. Needum. Needham. That's going to be the name of the app. I'm going to download that on Monday for sure, everybody. Please join me in downloading the Needham app on Monday. Okay, Richard. Stephen LaRoche.
Yeah.
You know Stephen. Stephen's he's a past editor of Beckett. He worked with In the Game trading cards. He wrote Got Him, Need Him, that book right there with John Waldman, someone I knew from Winnipeg back in the day. He told me to ask you about the original Angela James Cup and where it resides now.
So for those that don't know, as a photographer and a volunteer, I worked in the old NWHL, and after that in the Canadian Women's Hockey League. And that was a league that was around for 12 years. And, again, coming back to my databasing and stuff that I've built in the hobby and hockey, I did the league stats from the last year of the NWHL and the new CWHL, helped them get set up with all the awards. And again, it's actually, there is a hobby tie to it of all things. When I left Trade and Publishing, I had, barter dollars, which for whatever reason I couldn't use. And after spending a year and, volunteering, working in the CWHL and, knew Sammy Joe Small well, we created a trophy. It was a scoring trophy. It's called the Angela James Bowl. So I got this trophy, didn't know what the name was going to be. We created it. And a little bit of folklore around it. So every year I'd have a second edition, a small edition, which I'd created. It's kind of created like a bowl to kind of mimic the Art Ross trophy. We had different winners every year. And when the league folded, of all things, all the trophies from that league went up for auction. And I can remember I was, maybe 2 or 3 in the morning, just finishing up some work because I've got to travel to Hamilton the next day or something like that. And my phone has been blowing up, from everybody, from Steven to especially the fans in Montreal. Every year I'd go down to Montreal and watch the Canadians, Marie-Philippe Poulin, Caroline Ouellette, who's going to the Hall of Fame this year. And they were like, isn't that your trophy? Why is that going up for auction? And lo and behold, so we were able to put a stop to it. So in essence, this trophy, which I had donated, but, I'd always worked with the league, I'd done the entire Heritage League, and they thought they were going to kind of put it up for auction. Fortunately, and one of the tricks too was that the commissioner who had been there for 10, 11 years wasn't there at this time. So it was really just, a mistake. But thank goodness for like the fans that kind of stood up and say, hey, can you put a stop to that? So yeah, we got the trophy back to my house. they kind of questioned the authenticity, which was kind of funny because one, my kid created the wooden box for it, and when we opened it up, my business card was in there. But one of the pieces to that trophy too is my initials were on the inside, so everybody kind of knew it. Just, you know, the board didn't know, and that's why they thought they were going to put it for auction. But kind of what you know, so it kind of came back to my house, and I said, look, you know, I'm going to take it back. The original intention was for it to always go to the Hockey Hall of Fame. Of course, through hockey, I've always had a great relationship with, you know, some of the guys at the Hockey Hall of Fame there. And, you know, as the CWHL was growing, you know, they had it on display for many, many years. But there was always kind of that intent for it to go there. And lo and behold, I brought it back to my house. And because I said, look, if before this goes in the hall, I would put the plaque on every single year who won the scoring title. So I wanted to do that. I wanted to put wheels on the box, which is something the Hall of Fame had asked for. And then the pandemic happened, and there was no travel for a couple of years. But so Stephen, earlier this year, the trophy is now in the hands of the Hockey Hall of Fame. I finally did get down there, and they had it on display just when they opened up their women in hockey. They had a big display there. And they had it on display with all the other different hockey items, jerseys, and everything like that. And for those that don't know, Stephen LaRoche, you know, he had Angela James, and Angela James was the superstar of hockey in the 80s. And in the game, we've talked about them. They actually did cards of Angela James, and which was fantastic. So, you know, back in 2007, maybe not everybody kind of knew who she was. I'm glad a lot more people know who she is today. I'm glad that she's in the Hockey Hall of Fame, and because there are some big stars in, you know, women's hockey in those early 80s that, you know, maybe would have gotten forgotten. And Angela James was definitely one of the big ones.
Yeah, right on. Cool story. Well, I'm glad Stephen let me know to ask you, and thanks for sharing. All right, well, we're gonna wrap up. We're hitting the 2-hour mark. This has been great. As Corey Carr said, I appreciate this comment from Corey. Says, couldn't think of a better way to spend my Saturday. That's nice, Corey. Thank you so much. Hockey cardboard, long live food issues. We need more of that stuff back. Yeah, right on. So listen, Richard, this has been very interesting. So much great information. Thank you for joining. Chat, comments were great tonight. Thank you as always. Richard, I'm going to give you a moment just to, you know, final comments, anything you want to leave people with. But we're going to wrap this up. We're going to wrap this up. I'm grateful. I'll be back-to-back episodes tomorrow, everybody. 4:00 Eastern is the LCG pop culture auction coverage that I'm doing. That's a lot of fun. 9:30 Eastern tomorrow, PWCC Weekly Hockey, where we dive deep into several wonderful cards. That's going to be awesome. And then Monday night is MC Mondays Live. Lots of action on that show, covering eBay auctions as they end. $1,000 plus cards. That'll be fun. I think there's 84 of them on Monday. It's going to be a marathon, but it'll be a ton of fun. Thank you, JP. Appreciate you being here. Andrew, you too. Hockey Barn, thank you so much. Appreciate your guys' comments here. Final comments over to you, Richard, and then we're going to wrap it.
Yeah, you know what? This has been a blast. And we could have actually kept talking for hours because there's so much to talk about when it comes to the hobby. So I'm glad these conversations are happening. I'm going to miss the expo this year. I hope you guys are all who are down there. Go, you know, just walk the show, go meet Jeremy, start sharing these stories. And yeah, if you get a chance to pick up a 1979 80 card, yeah, handle it, pick it up. I mean, you saw it in the magazine that my kid was holding it. So no, tonight has been fantastic and good to kind of revisit, you know, especially when it comes to O-Pee-Chee and yeah, and the rookie cards, you know, always good to chat about that.
Right on. All right. Thank you so much. Thanks, Bill. Good to have you. We'll see you at the expo. Dan, appreciate it. Good to have you. All right, guys, that's it. This has been fun. Richard, thank you again. Chat, thank you again, everybody, for viewing, listening. And with that, this episode of Sports Cards Live is now